AM 1320 WFHR. It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. Now, with the Morning Magazine, here's Carl Hilke.
Thank you, Jerry, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's show. Normally, I'd be also welcoming Wisconsin Rapids Community Media, but something must have came up, and they're not here today, because Wood County Board Chairman Lance Pliml is here, and he's been very busy, as I can tell. So, good morning, Lance.
Morning, Carl. Thanks for having me. If I would have known we weren't going to have River Cities Access here, I wouldn't have had to put on the coat and tie.
Well,
right?
I dressed up, too, to look nice. Pam goes, you got to look nice for... Okay, well...
You look fantastic.
Thanks. Okay. The big news, of course, is the state budget. Finally got it done. Finally got it signed, etc. And the governor did. Your take on how it affects Wood County?
I think I'll speak first of all Wood County and then the counties as a whole because, as we've mentioned before, I sit on those boards and committees. The state budget was relatively friendly to county government. We came out somewhat unscathed in the whole process. There was a few additional dollars in transportation, some extra dollars into the human services arena. So at the end of the day, we did not see those massive cuts or even small cuts. And in some cases, as a result of over time, counties and local units of government have been pretty responsible in their spending. And I think, when the rubber meets the road, you're down there in Madison, you say, since we mandate about 80% of the spending that occurs at county levels, we have to fund those. And that's the message that we try to get across. We're looking pretty good. We would prefer a few additional dollars for road maintenance and improvement because we know that we are not on a maintenance schedule statewide that would allow us to have good roads going forward. The other thing I think we would like to see is some additional build-out of communication infrastructure, broadband, where you don't have that capability, or drives me nuts, I lose a cell phone signal, which doesn't happen in some of the bigger cities, and it would be nice if you could conduct business across the entire county. I would also go on and say I think it's somewhat of a re-election budget from the state level. Yeah. They've funded education. They funded those ones where there's typically revolt in partisan politics from the other side when certain issues aren't funded. I think that this was a budget where they tried to placate, generally everybody. Southeast Wisconsin road projects, which don't sound like they're going to get funded immediately, at least.
Okay. In terms of Wood County specifically, in terms of stuff that affects economic development, the airport project, Alexander Field, that's good news for...
That's tremendous news. When I heard we were, in line for $4 million to improve the airport here, that's fantastic. And that's part of the infrastructure that I always talk about, that, if you build it, they will come. It's certainly been a need with the Sand Valley development. It will certainly, the biggest problem for me, and I don't travel on business on a daily basis, but I do get out of the county occasionally, whether it be business or whether it be political in nature, to attend some of those functions in Washington, is waiting around at airports. Yeah. Now, I'm a lowly paid government or non-paid government official, so it doesn't matter. But if you're a corporate president making, $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 an hour, and you're sitting in an airport, it's a waste of time. When we can get those jets in and out of here, when we can get them to fuel here, as a place they stop as they hopscotch across the country, it brings to our area. I would love to see more of that come our way. I'd like to see some of those special places, Milwaukee, Madison, the Fox Valley, maybe even Wausau, Eau Claire, get a little less of the pie and us get a little more. But this is a fair amount of money in our coffers. Okay.
And in terms of overall, with as you're going into your budget, how is this going to affect you putting together the Wood County budget?
Well, from a state standpoint, the money allocated back to the counties, like I said, about 80% of the dollars that we collect are pass-through dollars to provide. What's really interesting when I go back, and I was looking at some numbers here, I actually have them in front of me. If I go all the way back to the year 1999, 2000, our mill rate, our tax rate in Wood County was a little over $6. Move ahead almost 20 years, and our tax rate this year is going to be $5.53. So a significant decrease in the mill rate from back in the early 90s. And I think that's a result of we've tried to be very careful when we spend your tax dollars. We try not to come to the public for additional dollars unless we need them. One of the things I often hear is, why didn't you say that? if I save for it, it means I took it out of your pocket and put it into, if you want to refer to it as a slush fund or a protected account somewhere.
Or your bank account.
It's my bank account, not your bank account. And our attitude in Wood County has been, we don't come to you unless we need the money. And we hope that we've been good enough stewards of that money that you realize that we don't ask unless we need. We have committed in our county to spend anywhere from about 3.1 to 4.5 additional $1 million a year failing. It's much less expensive to fix them than to replace them. We knew that we were not getting the state aids that would be necessary to keep up with those projects. We decided that if somebody paid an extra 5 or 6 cents on the mill rate over a course of a year, that's more than offset if you have to have your car realigned once a year because you're hitting potholes. So those decisions are tough to make sometimes, but at the end of the day, I think you're pretty lucky to be living in Wood County.
Mm-hmm. We get a lot for the money that we
Yeah, I think you do. And one of the things in local politics, I think way too much time is spent in both Washington and Madison defending your side of the aisle.
Right.
And oftentimes, in search of a perfect solution, they pass up 25 good solutions. We try to find the good solution. If we can fine-tune it later and make it a perfect solution, that's wonderful. But I don't think anybody at the end of the day, although you tend to know maybe which way some of your board members tend to lean, that there's never a decision that's made because it has a D behind your name. It's, what's best for the local taxpayer. And then my goal, I guess, as the board chair, is to make sure that the decisions that we make are, the discussions are transparent, the decisions are defendable. Typically I get people that call me oftentimes on an issue, and they're generally yelling at me when we start the conversation. And, usually after some discussion and some time, I would say 95% of the time they say, I understand. Now I understand why you're doing what you're doing. We have tremendous cost involved. And by the way, Wisconsin Rapids is not nearly as bad, or Wood County is many parts of the state. A state legislator recently said the eastern part of the state has a tremendous heroin epidemic, the western part of the state a meth epidemic. She said, it's going to be a mess when they meet in the middle, possibly, where we could be. But at the end of the day, it still drives costs in our court systems, in our law enforcement, with our sheriff's departments, the cost of incarceration, having those people in jail, the cost to human services, and all the programs that we run there that support family. In that respect, we appreciate all the eyes and ears out there of the community helping law enforcement, helping us along those lines. Because if we can cut those costs, it goes directly to the bottom line. And there's a lot of those things that we don't have direct control over. And
Wood County has been unique in the proactive methods, like Healthy People Wood County working with law enforcement, working with the health department on strategies to address the opioid problem, and getting prescription people to work to try and coordinate among a lot of different entities in this county to address these things.
This community specifically, and the county as a whole, has been extremely proactive in a lot of areas. We saw a huge downturn in the paper industry over the last 10 to 15 years. You didn't see a community roll over and die. You saw a diversification of industry. You've seen grassroots efforts from both the private sector and the public sector to diversify our economy. You've seen, you mentioned it, our health departments, law enforcement, our city and town governments have all pitched in. And I think you're seeing things improve, not just in Wood County, but somewhat across the state. Whether you... one of the ones that's certainly been in the headlines right now is the Foxconn deal.
Right.
And it rolls out the same way in Wood County. When somebody says to me, you spent X number of dollars of tax levy on the parks, and they brought in less revenue than the levy to offset that operating expense. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying, they may have, but what's the spin-off from that? The park revenue, in our grocery stores, in our restaurants, our hotels, they're buying product at our local stores. There's no way for me to account for that directly as a county representative. We see it in sales tax revenue, so I could easily say the increased sales tax revenue over what we thought we would have had because of tourism greatly justifies that. That's true. The Foxconn deal. I didn't roll the numbers. I'm not down there with the Legislative Fiscal Bureau or any of these other people, Department of Revenue, running those. There's the direct benefit from the employment that will occur and from job development, that there's no way to really roll that in. So although you hear there's a cost and a payback that'll occur over many, many years, my guess is it's much less than that. To relate that to the local level, if we spend $200,000 improving something at Lake Wazeecha, do we see $200,000 of additional camping revenue at Lake Wazeecha? And the answer is no, we don't. But the spin-off from that, the additional dollars that are garnered through the water ski tournament, and those people are at hotels. Last week, I got going over to Home Depot to pick up some stuff, and we had one of the biggest BMX events I have ever seen. There were cars parked everywhere. There were tents set up. There were thousands of people in town spending money. Does the BMX facility in and of itself justify the expense? Maybe not. But when you roll that into the other dollars that are spent in the community, those are the kind of things that make communities successful.
That's it. I mean, you invest in things that attract people and business to your community. And you can't just look at it, we spent this much. A dollar is spent multiple times.
Yeah, and it's hard, and it's hard to really quantify that exactly how it spins up. But I can tell you this, that we try not to spend dollars on things that we don't think in the long run will benefit the community. I work in an industry where I see people coming to town, both in my job and politically. Mm-hmm. They assume that there's education and they assume that there's employment and some of those other things. But what they're asking about are those lakes and facilities to fish and boat. So obviously, clean and plentiful water becomes an issue.
Right.
They ask about things. Where's your swimming pool? Well, that's been a tough one to answer the last couple of years, but we're working on that.
Right.
Where's the baseball fields? Where's the skate park? Where's the BMX track? All of those things facilitate government in being able to provide information and then infrastructure for those businesses that might want to relocate.
They have said, I've read in articles where they're saying, especially with millennials and recruiting millennials, it's not about the taxes I pay. What am I getting for my money? Is there a way I can walk to work? Is there a way, what kind of outdoor recreation or exercise recreation can I get? It's a whole different menu of things.
It's not even about wages.
No.
I personally know people who have quit their jobs in Wisconsin and moved to Utah because they enjoy rock climbing. Now, in my day and age, husband and wife did and move out there hoping they're going to find a job because they like the recreational opportunities. That would be, somewhat been considered crazy. I mean,
right.
Parents would have been screaming at you when you thought about doing that. But in today's world, lifestyle plays hugely into the decision as to where you're employed. So sometimes when you look around, you say, why are they doing that? Why is the city or the community building that facility? Why is the county spending money on that? We have seen those success stories in places that have done that, and we often try to, why reinvent the wheel? Emulate, copy those success stories, and we've done that. The next question you'll probably follow it is where we can do better, though.
Yeah.
And now, where can we do better?
Where can you do? If you're just joining us, welcome to the Morning Magazine. We're having our monthly visit with Wood County Board Chairman Lance Pliml. You talked about priorities. You're in the process of getting that budget put together. So let's talk. Where can we do better? What are some of the priorities for the next Wood County budget?
Well, I think the first thing that would really affect economies and towns is having people that are, that generally having 100% employment, or as close to that as you can get. Some of them were large meetings, some were smaller private meetings, but is the entitlement issue that we deal with. You can't give more away and have lower taxes. So I think there's a point in time where you have to reevaluate all the entitlements. When there is virtually a help wanted sign on every single business in Wisconsin Rapids, and we don't have the bodies to fill those jobs, we probably really shouldn't be handing dollars out to people who are unemployed or underemployed. Or we should taper those government assistance, at very high levels. You can call that the mean-spirited mode, but at the end of the day, most people don't want to work to support 15 other people.
No.
So when the opportunities exist, you need to do that. And I say that with full recognition of the fact that there are people within our communities through no fault of their own with, whether it be, physical handicap, cognitive problems, they don't have the mental capacity to be able to work in our society, or people need help. That's recognized. I'm talking about we have people in programs that really don't have a reason to be out there collecting those dollars. And until we address that, and I think they're fully aware of that state, there will never be enough dollars for education, for transportation, and for infrastructure build-out, because that spending has increased exponentially while the other hasn't. So then we go to what's the root of that? Why do we have that problem? I've made this comment in speeches, Carl. If the people in the 1940s heard us today say history books, when you look at the hardships that people suffered during World War I or World War II in the 40s, and how we rebuilt a nation, and where we garnered those revenues, and how we handled that, how we came out of the Depression, I don't think it's the toughest it's ever been. You just lace up your shoes or boots and get after it.
Well, yeah, and like you said, I've talked to a number of business people myself who say, "Carl, I got work. I need bodies.
We don't have enough bodies to fill the jobs that are out there."
Training. I mean, I know Wood County has been, a variety of foundations and private-public partnerships have been formed to work with places like Mid-State Technical College, UW Marshfield, to get kids trained for the jobs that are out there. Where they won't have to get into a whole lot of debt, can get educated close to home, and get hired right away, which mom and dad would love.
Mid-State has been sensational. Our technical college institutions across the state have been sensational at adapting programs to the needs of the employer locally. Our FSET program is away from the days of basically handing checks to people to, the welfare to work.
Right.
Type programs where we're trying to train. We're trying to get people independent. We're working in that direction. I think we've made great strides. Have we made enough? Probably not yet, but we're certainly working on those. But even that said, one of the things that we have to do, and I think the tech schools have done a great job, and I think the universities see this, is at the tech school you may learn a trade. We not only need which
Sure.
is applicable to that trade. So it's great if I teach you to weld, but I want to teach you how to run the welding shop that employs 1,000 people. And part of the problem we've had, I think, in our society, in this country is, we identified people back in high school and said, you're either on a college track or you're not. And if you're not on that college track, you're going to do menial labor to some extent. And that is not true in any way whatsoever. I can tell you that the people coming out with these job skills from the technical schools or through the trades should have higher than those that are doing the other track. And nobody should be looking down their nose at those careers. In fact, I would dare people out there today, I challenge you to find somebody in the building trades to get something done for you in the next 6 months. It's almost impossible.
I can speak to that. I need a new roof on my house, and it's because of the weather and a part of the problem. All the contractors are busy. They are busier than they go, give me your name, I'll get you on the list, and maybe next spring.
And we don't have looked at, education in the past. And
right.
Counties don't deal with education other than we work with those people, at the tech schools, the, UW, Marshfield,
right.
Some of those. And I think that as they realize that they don't operate in silos and that the high schools have to feed qualified people to the tech schools into the university system, but there's no shame. There should be pride in learning those skills and then teaching them those soft skills so they can not only run the business. It shouldn't be an either or. Is where I'm coming from.
I'm going to renewable energy program. There are folks who have started their own solar energy companies out of that program and are doing. Viking Electric out of Minnesota just did the big project at McMillan Memorial Library. That's owned by a young man that's from this area.
Well, and that's the problem. And like I said, it was somewhat societal, but, it's pretty hard to look guys like, Steve Jobs, who's passed away, or Michael Dell, or Bill Gates in the eye, or Zuckerberg, and say, I had an idea. They ran with it. They're educated in different manners. But there are those opportunities out there that are a different track than a 4-year university program, and that's why we're working so hard to integrate all of those. We don't have a direct role in that, but we certainly talk about that, because if we don't educate people, if we don't train them, if we don't get them ready for to be adults in society, we then later see them either in our criminal justice system or, through our human services departments.
And you can help facilitate those discussions, like in the other areas that we've talked about. To say, okay, here's the problem, and you all have certain skill sets to help address that problem. Let's get to work.
Yep, time to move forward. And like I said, I think our community has done a great job. I have seen communities that have basically, rolled up the sidewalk, shut the town down, and said,
whine and
we're
moan.
done.
Yeah.
And there's been other extreme examples of success, and we're closer to the top of that extreme example of success than we are to that lower end of that.
I've heard that from folks when I've gone out of town. There's a lot of good things that are going on in your area.
The state and national, and have hosted the World Water Ski Tournament.
We're going to host and once the new Lincoln Pool is all set and ready, we're going to host a state meet there.
So there's a lot of things, and that is thanks to all of you out there who have made Wisconsin Rapids a welcoming community, which I hear. A meeting the other day up in Marshfield, a county's board meeting. It was the board of directors. I cannot tell you how many people from around the state told me they've never been to Marshfield before, and they're coming back with their family because there was so much to see, and it offered so much. So
when you see visitors here in our area, Wisconsin Rapids, Marshfield, or anywhere in Wood County, make them feel welcome. We're all ambassadors.
Cranberry culture right now. Get out there and see that.
That's right. Cranberry Highway tours. Okay, Lance, I know you're busy. I always appreciate your time, and we'll talk again next month.